Hi everyone, welcome to Passion4Med YouTube channel, and today we will be discussing and looking at an introduction to basic neurology. In this video, we will define some basic terminology on neurology and explore neurons. Then, we will proceed to talk about the central and peripheral nervous system, meninges, and about the actions that the nervous system controls. So, what is neurology? Neurology is the branch of medicine regarding the study and treatment of diseases in the nervous system. The nervous system is a highly complex system which functions to allow organisms to detect changes in their surroundings and respond to it, and to enable coordination of different parts of the body. Nerves, which are part of the nervous system, are a group of neurons that form a cable-like structure to conduct nerve impulses from one part of the body to another. Neurons are known as the basic building block of the nervous system. We will discuss more about neurons in the next few slides. There are two major components in the nervous system: the central nervous system that consists of the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system, which consists of peripheral nerves and sense organs. Sense organs are organs that contain receptor cells that are able to detect stimuli, changes in the external environment, and convert them into electrical impulses. An example of a sense organ includes skin. When it is too hot or too cold, the temperature receptor cells in your skin are able to detect the change in the temperature in the external environment and convert it into electrical impulses. What are neurons? Neurons are fundamental units of the brain and the nervous system. They are specialized cells in the nervous system that transmits information and receives information from other cells. This is a basic structure of a neuron. Here we have the dendrites, which conduct nerve impulses from another cell to the cell body. The cell body contains most of the cell organelles and the nucleus. The axon hillock, located over here, is a specialized part of the cell body of the neuron that connects to the axon. Action potentials originates from the axon hillock, which I'll talk more about in the next video. The axon is located from around here to around here. The axon conducts nerve impulses away from the cell body. Over here is the myelin sheath, which is an insulating layer that forms around the nerves and is made of proteins and fatty substances. The myelin sheath is produced by Schwann cells, and they surround the myelinated fiber. Note that not all Schwann cells produce myelin. Non-myelinating Schwann cells mainly serve to maintain the axon. Here are the nodes of Ranvier, which are a periodic gap in the myelin on the axon of certain neurons that facilitate rapid conduction of nerve impulses. This slide sums up the function of each part of the neuron, which was explained in the previous slide. Do note that the excite is the terminal branch of the axon. So these are diagrams of motor, sensory, and relay neurons. These neurons differ in function, length of fiber, which is dendron and axon, and the shape of its cell body. The sensory neuron transmits nerve impulses from the sense organs to the relay neuron located in the spinal cord of the central nervous system. Meanwhile, the relay neuron transmits nerve impulses from the sensory neuron to the motor neuron located in the spinal cord of the central nervous system. On the other hand, the motor neuron transmits nerve impulses from the relay neuron to the effector cells, which effect a change in the body. Next, sensory neurons have a longer dendron and shorter axon compared to motor neurons, which have a shorter dendron and a longer axon. Meanwhile, the relay neuron has a shorter dendron compared to a sensory neuron. However, the axon length of a relay neuron is longer compared to a motor neuron and a sensory neuron. Sensory neurons have a circular-shaped cell body. On the other hand, relay neurons and motor neurons have an irregular-shaped cell body. Note that when we say where a neuron is located, we refer to its cell body location, and not where its dendron or axon is located. The central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord. The brain controls many functions like sensation, voluntary movement, perception, and abstract functions. Perception is about consciously appreciating sensation, which comes from our five senses. Let's say we touch an object. Touch is one of our five senses. If the object is vibrating, we feel its vibration. The feeling of its vibration is what known as perception. Abstract functions involve thinking, feeling, memory, and learning. The spinal cord's function is to transmit signals received from the peripheral nerves to the brain, and from the brain to the peripheral nerves. Both the brain and the spinal cord are surrounded by cerebrospinal fluid, which is a clear fluid. This fluid's function is to protect the brain and spinal cord during an injury by cushioning its impact. Moreover, it provides nutrients and removes waste materials from the brain. The peripheral nervous system consists of peripheral nerves lying outside of the central nervous system. Some examples of peripheral nerves include cranial nerves and spinal nerves. Cranial nerves, there are 12 pairs of them, leading from the brain to the other parts of the head, neck, and trunk. Spinal nerves are nerves that send signal from and to the spinal cord. There are 3 types of nerves: motor, sensory, and mixed. Motor nerves consist of solely motor neurons. Sensory nerves consist of solely sensory neurons, while mixed nerves contains a mixture of both motor and sensory neurons. Some cranial nerves and all spinal nerves are mixed nerves. The sensory neurons in the peripheral nervous system provide feedback to the central nervous system about the inner state of the organs. This is part of homeostasis, which is a self-regulating process of an organism that maintains a constant internal environment. The peripheral nervous system can further be split into 3 types: autonomic, somatic, and enteric nervous systems. The autonomic nervous system controls involuntary actions, actions that are not within our conscious control. The somatic nervous system controls voluntary movements, actions that are within our conscious control. The enteric nervous system controls the digestive system. Next, about meninges. Meninges is a protective barrier that safeguards the most important organs, like the brain. Not only does it serve as a separation barrier between the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system, the meninges also contains blood vessels that supply blood to the tissue in the central nervous system and produces cerebrospinal fluid. To be more precise, the choroid plexus, which is in the pia layer, produces cerebrospinal fluid. There are 3 layers in the meninges. First, the outermost layer, which is the furthest away from the central nervous system, dura. Next, arachnoid, which is a spidery layer in the middle of the dura and the pia. The arachnoid is connected to the pia metal through tiny fibrous extensions that span between the subarachnoid space between the 2 layers. The subarachnoid space provides a route for the passage of blood vessels and the nerves through the brain. Pia, the softest and thinnest layer, is in direct contact with and closely covers the cerebral cortex and the spinal cord. Pia has a rich supply of blood vessels, which provides nutrients to nervous tissues. What are the actions controlled by the nervous system? Well, we have voluntary and involuntary actions. Voluntary actions are produced with conscious control, and the impulse is generated by the brain, while involuntary actions are produced without conscious control. Both voluntary and involuntary actions may not have a stimulus. Examples of voluntary actions are walking and raising a hand, and examples of involuntary actions are digestion and sneezing. Reflex action is a type of involuntary action, and it is an immediate response to a specific stimulus without conscious control. Its main function is to protect one from harm. The brain and the spinal cord serve as reflex centers, where sensory impulses are converted to motor impulses. There are 2 types of reflex actions: cranial reflexes and spinal reflexes. Cranial reflexes are reflexes controlled by the cranial nerves, while spinal reflexes are controlled by the spinal nerves. An example will be a knee-jerk response. The pathway of a reflex action is known as a reflex arc. The reflex arc is the shortest pathway by which the nerve impulse can travel from a receptor to an effector. The key operators in the reflex arc are the receptor cells, which are here, sense organs, sensory neurons, relay neurons, motor neurons, and effector cells. In the reflex arc of a knee-jerk reflex, for example, the receptor cells in the sense organs, which is the knee, detect a stimulus. The stimulus can be, let's say, a pinprick. These receptor cells generate a nerve impulse. This nerve impulse is transmitted by the sensory neuron to the central nervous system, the spinal cord to be specific. The relay neuron in the central nervous system transmits the nerve impulse from the sensory neuron to the motor neuron. The motor neuron transmits the nerve impulse from the central nervous system to the effector cell. The effector cell enables a response to take place, which in this case will be to move the knee. The effector cell over here is a muscle that will enable this movement. I hope that this video gave you a brief insight into neurology. Like and subscribe to our channel to obtain interesting videos like this in your feed. Thank you for watching.